Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Judy Simons, and I am the president of the Bermuda Olympic Association. With me today are Bramwell Smith-Kings, Secretary General of the BOA, Couture Horton-Perrin-Chief, who chairs the Bermuda Olympic Association Standards Committee, and Brenda Dale, our first Vice President, and also Chef de Mission for our Tokyo Games. Today, we have the pleasure of announcing officially the names of the athletes who have qualified to represent Bermuda in their respective sports at the Tokyo Games, which begin on July 24th. Given recent news coverage, I anticipate there may be questions about the composition of the team going to Tokyo, and I would ask that you please hold them to the end of our announcement, and we will be happy to ask questions then. One of the best parts of being president of the BOA is that every 4 years I have the great pleasure of officially announcing our Bermuda Summer Olympic team and celebrating the achievements of our young athletes who have worked so very hard, excelling in their sports and earning their places to compete among their peers at the pinnacle of sport. This year, it took us 5 years to get to that announcement due to the global pandemic. And the impact of COVID makes the achievements of our qualifying athletes even more impressive. In all cases, they've been managing and refining their training to best prepare themselves to be at a peak condition for July 2020. COVID certainly derailed those plans, separating our athletes from their coaches and training facilities and disrupting the training regimen and delaying Olympic dreams for a full year. Athletes had to get creative in adapting their training, in many cases training alone, and while dealing with the same difficulties that all of us have experienced: social distancing, shelter at home, travel restrictions, and quarantine requirements. That makes the accomplishment of these three athletes who have qualified for Tokyo that much more impressive. So I am pleased and I have the great pleasure to name the members of the team who qualified to represent Bermuda, our country, in Japan later this month. They are Dara Lise in rowing, Flora Duffin in triathlon, and Annabelle Collins in equestrian. Unfortunately, as we announced a couple of weeks ago, due to Annabelle's horse, for which she qualified, the horse suffered an injury, and it would not be ready in time to compete. Annabelle has made the most difficult decision to withdraw from these games. Congratulations to all. We look forward to watching you compete for Bermuda in Tokyo. And congratulations as well to all Bermudians on the athletes who were striving to reach the qualifying standards for Tokyo. We were proud to support you on your developmental journeys, and we will continue to do so as you work towards qualifying for Paris 2024 through all the junior festivals, the CAC Games, Commonwealth, and Pan Am Games. Thank you. So we will now be open to any questions.
I'll start if that's okay. I'll start if that's okay. Obviously, it's our smallest squad, Summer Olympics ever. Obviously, two athletes. It could have been double the number. Obviously, if Madeline and Jessie had the universal places accepted by the BOA. I was hoping you guys would just talk me through the process of how and why that decision was made. And was it a single person decision? Was it a board? Was it a commission? Could you just talk me through the process of why that decision was made?
I can't hear you very clearly, Sam. So that's right. So if you don't mind, next time I can take your
Of course, yeah.
I will defer to our standards chair, Couture Horton-Perrin, who will be more than happy to take you through our process.
Sure. Can you just repeat the question? I'm so
sorry. Of course.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was saying obviously it's the smallest squad that's been named ever. Summer Olympics. It could have been double that. Could have been 4 had the universality places been accepted for Jessie Washington and Madeline Moore. I was hoping you could talk me through the process of how that decision was made. Was it a single person decision? Was it a board? Just the process of how that was done.
Sure, absolutely. So at the beginning of every quadrennial, the standards committee is tasked with looking at the overall environment of sport and looking ahead to the next entire quadrennial. That would be the CAC Games, the Commonwealth Games, the Olympic Games, Pan Am Games, sorry, and the Olympic Games. I think that the performance performance levels of the athletes who attend each version of all of these games just continues to get better. And as the globe gets better, so must we. And when we made this decision, and I will walk you through the entire process, it was a difficult decision because it's not something that we have traditionally done over the past few quadrennials. It is not a single person decision. I have the honor of chairing the standards committee, but goodness, I would say that I'm one of the precious faces on the committee. There is a wealth of knowledge, sporting knowledge, and there are 8 members of the standards committee, 3 Olympians, and the others. I mean, we've had people who have been involved in the Olympic movement for 40 years. So there's that. And then every decision that is made by the standards committee has to go to the executive board. The executive board has 11 voting members, and most of us chair a committee. So that specific decision also went through the General Assembly, which is comprised of all of our 26 national governing bodies. They were presented to, and they all received minutes if they unfortunately missed it. And additionally, we're open to any questions or concerns that national sports governing bodies may have, and they're free to get back to the Secretary General or any of us on the executive board.
So, obviously, we read the decisions made after 2016 that you guys wouldn't accept professional places. Was there anything in particular that from Rio that made that decision change? Is it an official legislation that you guys started back then, 2016, 17? We're no longer going to do this.
Yeah, so it is not a policy, and in fact it was a strong recommendation, and it has been applied across all of the games that I already mentioned. So obviously the junior games, those are for developmental purposes. So we like to give all of the athletes the chance to compete at those games, regardless of whether or not they qualify. Nothing specific happened after Rio, but what we were seeing was we did have larger teams with, I would say, varied performance levels. And at the standards committee level, it was sort of, I would say, a consensus that we needed to sort of step our game up a little bit. We were providing more funding to the athletes, they were getting more support, and that was something that was really important to us to continue to financially support them, as well as keeping in mind that now, because of the way the globe is going, faster, stronger, higher, we have to adjust our processes in order to accommodate that. The great part is that the IOC, Pan-Am Sport, and Commonwealth Games has instituted youth versions of these games, so that, I mean, they didn't have that when I was growing up, so we were thrown to the sharks early, and it can be quite traumatic for young athletes to be in that type of an environment, so it's really a great developmental step. Additionally, sports science has changed, sports psychology has changed, so the frame of mind that sports administrators are in are now, we're talking about long-term athlete development. We're talking about the longevity of an athlete's career, not using them up and throwing them to the sharks or the wolves before they're in an athlete readiness position that we want for them to be at. So nothing specific after 2016, but just growth.
Swimming's not the only sport that gets this offer, is it?
No.
The other sports knew what the deal was and have accepted it.
Right, so I would say that in the General Assembly, November 22nd of 2017, was when all of our national sports governing bodies got the presentation from the Standards Committee. There have been some disappointments along the way, and it's not just been the Olympic Games. You'll remember that we had some people trying to qualify for the Commonwealth Games who didn't quite meet the standard, and unfortunately they could not go. But I would also argue that that was one of the highest performing Commonwealth Games teams that we've had in recent times. We had a medal, Florida Duffy, we had finalists, personal best. So no, this is not something that should be new to anybody. It's been applied across the board without prejudice, as the president said in the press release, for the past, this has been 4 years.
So just to clarify, because you said it wasn't a policy, it was a recommendation. So all athletes, all sporting bodies were well aware that ahead of time, before now, no invitation place was being given out.
That's absolutely
So
correct.
4 years ago, invitation 2017.
2017, right.
And so why was there not a comeback then? That the reaction has been to now. Why
I'm
was it?
sorry, you're gonna have to ask
Right.
whoever it is that's pushing that.
Yeah.
I really wouldn't have an answer for that.
And you said about developmental, that's part of the reason why, people aren't being given university places because they're not people ready. I suppose the argument from that counter argument would be that you look at someone like Florida Duffy, for example, who may not have done the best she's done in her first Olympics, but she's steadily progressed from there. Is there not the argument that athletes would be better prepared having the experience going to Olympics rather than, say, next year if Madeline and Jessie qualify it, the sort of psychological perspective of being there, then it would be better off going this time just to experience it?
Sure, so you know what, I think that there are two schools of thought on this, right? And I don't want to focus on Flora from 2008. That was a tough race for her. She was pulled off the course, and I would never speak for her, but it was a little traumatic. Yes. And perhaps I'm not the best person up here to talk about that. I know that the Secretary General has had quite a bit of experience working with young athletes, and the sort of new development in sports science, which speaks to athlete preparation and athlete readiness, and the importance of ensuring that an athlete is prepared for the level of competition that they're going to be competing at. So, if the Secretary General wants to add anything to that.
Sure, thank you for your question. Very complicated and long way to do it, but my response would be that Victoria is absolutely right. And as I look back in the past, 20, 30 years ago, there were not many opportunities for young athletes, young elite athletes, or elite athletes, senior athletes to go to all these competitions. It was the Pan Am Games, CAC, Commonwealth Olympics. Now we have, as you were mentioned, all the in-betweens, the Youth Games and fundings available for athletes for the Pan Am Games and Youth Olympics. And you asked a question about going back for the experience. I believe philosophically, those folks who say the Olympics is not a place of development. Some countries may decide that they're going to take a universality spot. We're not the only country in the world that has, who's not going to use those as universality spots because of the philosophy and, the recommendation from our standards committee. So it really is, I think that's what's changed. I'm much older now, so you don't really know me because of my gray hair. And back in the day, it was okay, let's try to get as much experience as we can and expose, especially coming from Bermuda as a small country. I think now the role has become smaller. There's more funding, I believe, and opportunity and good coaching and chances for our young athletes to go overseas, whether it's college or to Europe to school. And to throw them in the fire before they're ready sometimes may not be the best thing, especially when they're young. So, with my experience as a coach and working in administration, we want to be optimistic that there are future opportunities for these athletes. And I'm very optimistic, I know we all are, about, the future for Paris. And so, that may be a school of thought, but I believe those of us that are people that are engaged in science and sport, are not going to throw their athletes into positions where they're not ready for. There's no guarantee that they will go in, do well or not do well. That's not the point. I think as Victoria mentioned, is the developmental stages, and they made a firm stance to stand by this. And so, I would like for us to focus on Tokyo. I'm excited for athletes, and yes, disappointed that we didn't have a large team, but excited for the potential for our students to mature, to improve, to learn from their experience. To not optimistic by, this much. He was 19th in the world, and he's still doing it. But he understands what his opportunities are for the future. And so I would hope, and you can't make a firm commitment here that, Paris will have an improvement. So developmentally, I think, we're very fortunate, we have a lot of young athletes in lots of different sports. And so that would be my take on your question, the readiness and the preparation, and not to discourage an athlete from going, just to go. I believe, there's never a guarantee. Anyway, you need to work hard and pursue all the avenues to get there.
It's been sorry.
Yeah.
The press conference.
Could you do
Of course.
one more then?
Yeah, of course.
Greg?
Thank you. Ladies, reminders from the broadcast and just a few questions for you. The BBC has asked the Bermuda Olympic Association on multiple occasions to see the Olympic selection policy. To date, we, the media, have been refused access to do this policy. We've checked the BOA website, and besides the Constitution, there are no policies or any rules or information of any kind for Bermuda athletes or sports federations to follow. It appears that the BOA is trying to hide from the media and the public. Why do you not have any policies or guidelines published anywhere for people to see? And just as a follow-up, 2 years ago in 2019, the highest sports court in the world, the International Court of Arbitration for Sport, ruled against the BOA. It found that the BOA had historically kept its rules and policies secret. The court also pointed out that it is now commonplace for sports governing bodies to place the rules and policies on their website and to properly communicate them to the athletes. After this court's judgment, BOA did go on record and acknowledged its failures of the past and promised to effectively communicate the policies better in the future, particularly to the athletes. But it seems clear today that the athletes have once again been failed. How do you?
And it's the same thing for the World Olympians for Bermuda?
Excuse me?
And it's the same thing for the Bermuda World Olympians Association?
Yes, absolutely.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. We do recognize as volunteers that the audience job that we all do on the executive board is laborious. We're actually currently upgrading our website. That does take time. Yes, we probably could have, and we were probably remiss in not putting the standards or the recommendations made by our standards committee, but it is a work in progress, and we continue to listen to all our NSGBs. We have an open door policy. They're welcome to come to us to express any questions, comments, or concerns. And so that is something, thank you, Greg, for bringing that back to us. We will make sure that whoever's in charge of the marketing and PR committee upgrades our committee and puts anything that is we feel relevant to NSGBs and then onto their athletes will be on our website. But it is the responsibility of the national governing bodies who we work with that they report to their, or give information to their athletes of what the expectations are by the Bermuda Olympic Association.
And if I might add, Greg, as we indicated, the presentation was made at the General Assembly, which is all the national sports governing bodies. So it was presented to them, and they actually even got a copy of the presentation, and they got a copy of the minutes. So not only so that recommendation was put in place, and it has been practiced throughout this entire quadrennium. It is the responsibility of the national sports governing bodies to then relay that information to their athletes. We're not in control of whether or not that is how that's done or whether or not that was done. However, no athlete in my mind wouldn't have been aware, since that has gone through our ranks, because that is the way in which that recommendation has been practiced for each games throughout the quadrennium.
Final question. How many officials, coaches, support staff, BOA executive board members will be traveling to Tokyo to support the team of 2 athletes at these games?
This is always a really big juggle. Okay, so for small countries, we generally have a very difficult time. As you know, there is something called an estimated team size calculator. And we were given yesterday version 6. And with that calculator, we have to, depending upon the number of athletes, so we work from a year out, looking at our long list. So all of our national sports governing bodies say, here's all the people that we think are going to make it. We put that in, and then we get from there an estimate of how many officials Unfortunately, since we have had, and it's an ever-changing amount. So once you lose an athlete, you lose an official. So which is sort of their team coach, their manager, however you want to put it. Once you lose an athlete, that's what happens. So once we lost Annabelle, we knew that we would be losing some of the part of the team in terms of the officials. Until yesterday, until we got the new team size calculator, I can't tell you. What I can tell you exactly is that each athlete will have their coach. So Flora will have Dan, and Dara will have Rob Baker. Hopefully, all goes well on the health side for his coach. And we will endeavor to provide him with one or two other officials that they require to make their experience the best that it can be and to give them all the help that they can have. We've had to limit the number of officials previously because we just don't get it. A small team just doesn't get it. Now that we know, and we held out big hope as well as in terms of what Brandon said, for athletics athletes. So we were ever hopeful until Monday that maybe Janai or Tyrone got in. But now that we now officially know that this is what we have, then we'll be told. And in addition, Tokyo 2020 is making decisions on a daily basis and changes on a daily basis. So one of the things that they had was we had right up until Annabelle was supposed to go, that they would allow horse openers as an example. At the last minute, they then changed it. So based on the COVID, and it's an ever fluid situation. We were just speaking beforehand about how we're getting emails, like this. I don't think I've ever done so much reading in my entire life, but it's daily. And we have to keep up with it because the rules are changing daily. Tokyo is adapting to what's happening in the world, and as we know, with the new COVID variant that's around, it's changing. They're limiting the number of people. So until, for the next few days, we won't know exactly who we have, but we do know at least we have that.
Thank you. And final question, if I may. The founder of the Modern Olympics said that the most important part of the games is not winning, but taking part. I've spoken to some parents and athletes who are very, very, very heartbroken. They feel that an opportunity is being robbed from them and an ability to represent their country on the world stage. Do you feel that the decision that you're making is overriding with that impulse?
I think we kind of addressed that already in the sense of saying, there's two schools of thought. So what we have done is we have said what our plan was and how we were going to implement it for this quadrennial, and we've had to apply that equally across all of the games.
Do you think you'll regret the decision?
To date, I don't regret it. Okay, there's countless stories. We watched, if you've been watching the Olympic trials, okay, on TV, and you look at Simone Biles, basically the best that probably ever has been in gymnastics. But in order for her to go to Tokyo 2020, she had to participate with the rest of the members of her team and go through the Olympic qualifiers. There were lots of people that said she shouldn't have had to do it. On the other side, look at the stories where we see in swimming, in backstroke. So somebody who was a world champion didn't qualify, couldn't go. So and on the other side, we wouldn't want to destroy any athlete in that sense. So we made the decision to apply it equally across all of the games, and we look forward to continuing to support all of our athletes, as they qualify for all the different events and different games as we move forward.
Any other questions?
Judy, as president, we've got a bit of a juxtaposition on this Olympics. In one sense, we've got arguably the best chance we have for a gold medal with Florida. On the other hand, the smallest team, as BOA president, how do you do?
Well, it's never easy, but I want to focus on the positive, which we had 3 athletes qualify, which is always our greatest goal. I'm not going to put any pressure on Flora. She knows what she has to do. She's shown the way. But what I'd like to get from this is that we have a journey to success, and this is no better time that we have right now is to get our youngsters going through the junior ranks and learning the ropes of what it takes to be a champion. Are we a little disappointed as a small team? Of course we are. But these guys qualified to get there, and we couldn't be more prouder of where they are right now. And we're going there to support them, to give them the absolute best shot to get on the podium or get the best, personal best national records that they can get.
It was mentioned a little bit earlier, the BOA supplied more funding
That's
over this
correct.
period. So how much funding was supplied to athletes that compare that to previous quadrennial?
Well, when it comes to that, we have to wait to the end of each quadrennial, and the IOC, along with our continental regions, advises us how much funds are available to us. But we also get funding from the Bermuda government through the Elite Athlete Program. I will be very honest with you, we have never rejected any application that has been presented to us from an NSGB for any of our athletes. They've all been reimbursed any monies that they've spent. The committee that actually handles that is the Standards Committee, but we fund our athletes to go to all their meets that they need to get to qualify for these games.
If I can speak a little bit about that. We actually, I think better than ever before, have used PAM sport funding, Commonwealth Games funding, which we have never had before, and IOC Olympic Solidarity for things like coach education and preparation funds. Additionally, our athletes are now receiving, and this would be new as of this quadrennial, they've been invited to give us budgets, so we'll be able to give them money ahead of time so that they're not out of pocket as much as, I mean, when I was an athlete, we were dirt poor until they were able to give us some funding back. Additionally, the A-Elite athletes who receive stipends, they receive stipends from the BOA, that went up. So the amount of money that across the board the athletes have been getting has gone up. So we're hoping that with that injection of funds, they'll be able to get better coaching, better training trips, and just be overall better prepared for all of these needs.
Now, if I understand correctly, Victoria, you said it was like a three-step process for approval of the athletes, starting with the Standards Committee, and then it went to
The executive board?
executive board and then the general assembly. What was the vote on Mandy and Jesse? Was it unanimous or approximately what was
So
at all three levels?
We did not take a vote on Maddie and Jesse. That's not how that worked. There were 8 members of the Standards Committee, and I don't know that I would tell you exactly what that is, but what I will say is that it was a recommendation by the Standards Committee that went to the executive board. There was a lot of deliberation, I think, at the executive board level, less at the Standards Committee level, but more at the executive board level, and that's kind of how that shaped out. But
So was it unanimous at the Standards Committee, or was there some dissent?
I don't know that I'm able to answer that. I know that the minutes of the Standards Committee meeting are confidential, but they are available to the executive board and they are available to the national sports governing bodies. But I don't run the good governance committee, so I'm not sure how that goes.
And Don, to be honest with you, thank you, Victoria. And to be honest with you, Don, our minutes, executive board minutes are also confidential. We've all had to sign a confidential agreement within the executive board. But I think today, what we really want to talk about is that we have 2 great athletes who have qualified to get to these games. You can beat the conversation about universality, but we've stood firm, we've applied it across the board. So let's talk about the positive side of why we're here today. Well, that's why we have Brenda here as our first Vice President, Chef de Mission. Can we talk about what do we think these athletes are going to do, what we've had to go through to get them there, what's the COVID situation. So I think you've got the message with how we've handled universality. We stand firm in our position. Will we review it going forward? Absolutely. The Standards Committee going forward will have a conversation, and either the recommendations will remain the same or there will be some adjustments, but that is for the new quadrennial. I would like to focus on our two athletes that are going to our games at the middle of this month.
I just want to, can I just address one topic, the question that you asked on, and to follow up what the first said, you know, it's not to be the BOA's horn, but the funding piece is a huge part. Folks think it's a funding issue, but and I will say, since I've been on board, I'm very impressed with the amount of funding that's available, and we've been very fortunate that we get funding from Cannon Sports, from the Commonwealth Games Federation, as well as the IOC, not just for our elite athletes, but for our junior athletes. As Judy talks about looking forward to Tokyo and celebrating, you know, our participation there, we have a future of young athletes in a wide range of sports that are getting funding. And I'm smiling because, you know, some of this is new thanks to the Standards Committee BOA's foresight. And we can now, you know, parents don't have to pull out of the pocket as much. Of course, they still have occasional things, but for coaching and for going to meets and camps and things of those sorts. I think it's tremendous, you know, as a parent to athletes and being an old lady who's you know, because now we want to have access, you know, so access, everybody can have access, not just those who can afford the sport or who are in an organization where there is support. So as we celebrate, you know, Tokyo, you know, I look forward to, you know, us in the next quadrennials, some of these athletes developing toward that. And so for me, in working in this office and working for the BOA, my top priority is making sure that all those athletes that need the funding get it, you know, and so that's the only way we can expect a small country like Bermuda to perform at the international stage, which is extremely competitive, you know, and so I just want to put that in there because I think we sometimes, I think we have challenges, especially now during COVID, around funding and being able to travel and all that. And the NSGBs, they take the time to put in their budgets and to submit those budgets, and we'll get some funding for their athletes at all levels, you know, elite levels. So I think that's something that we should all be very proud of. We're very unique opportunity in a small country of having so many athletes in a variety of sports that, you know, you're already hearing about some of these athletes as they travel. So I just want to throw that in because I think it's really important.
What sort of challenges are you going to face the athletes when they get there dealing with COVID restrictions? I mean, already there's a lot of, there's already a lot of extra procedures like that you don't see in other meets. So how much of it?
Well, they already will have to spend about 2.5 hours. They have to download a number of different apps. They've already had to submit an activity plan, which details exactly where they're allowed to go. Some people have termed it the sort of prison Olympics, but because the restrictions are great in the sense that the athletes will definitely be focused because the only place they can go is from the village to their training venue and from the village to their competition venue, and then they're out within 48 hours of being eliminated from competition, and hopefully at the finals. So that's, you know, from the start. The athletes have, you know, I mean, they've been wildly challenged, you know, through COVID, an extra year. You know, for some people, they look at it, wow, that was, you know, in a really positive way, that was an extra year of preparation. But they've faced absolutely enormous challenges. When I think of, for Annabelle, she not only had the challenges for herself in terms of facing COVID, but she had outbreaks. There was outbreaks of equine herpes, not to mention equine COVID. I have come over the past year to an absolute new appreciation of what our equestrian athletes have to do, because there's definitely two athletes. And that was really evident this year when she qualified with Joy Arrow, has been working with her second horse, Chucky Checker, who made the first qualification and didn't quite make, you know, the second one. It was off by 0.4%. So heartbreaking. Those stories, you know, those heartbreaking stories are around the world. We've seen them around the world. this year. But in terms of what they have to do, again, from now, they have to submit their activity plan, they now have to download these apps, they have to record their health situation for 14 days, they have to be tested, Dara has to be tested 3 days, for 3 days, the 3 days before he leaves, because he's coming from the UK, they will be tested daily. It's nonstop. So the COVID side of it has really added, I really do feel for each and every athlete that is at those games, because the COVID side of it has just put a whole new element to, I really just want to focus on, my training and sport and competing. But the COVID element has just added a whole new large dimension.
In a sense, how do you feel like that's taking away some of the Olympic experience? Because I know like Rio was like a big party,
Yes.
and all those extra things that go on in the athletes village and things now are being clamped down.
Yeah, and the village will be a very different place from what any of the ones who have, had the honor of being there before have experienced. It won't be that, if they do get the chance to go everywhere they go, they have to book. They will have an app that will tell them how many people are where. In the dining hall, even there's, plexiglass where you would go and talk to other people, but there's plexiglass in terms of where you eat. If the dining hall's too full, you look on your app, you can decide if you're going to play and go, or, so unfortunately, that it is a totally different situation than one could have ever imagined, that I could have never imagined, even having followed it from 2020 through to today. But I think yesterday I had a chat with Dara, Elisa Day, and when you hear the joy in that young man's voice for, hey, it's close, I'm gonna go, the excitement was just horrible, and his positivity. And here's a young man who took a year off got a year off from Oxford to ask for a year's leave of absence from the most prestigious university to qualify for the 2020 Olympics. Did, and then was told, great, well, sorry it didn't happen, but you got to get back to studies, young man. And he just finished his exams a few weeks ago. So there's a young man who left from the United States, went back to the UK to do his Oxford exams, unimaginable in my view, but he said, that's 2 weeks ago. Now it's just this. It's just focusing on this. And Flora, well, she's been, she's done everything she possibly can to focus on the games. And so we're just so excited for them. And so I hope for each and every athlete that is there that, that they will be able to do what they were, what they want to do when they're there in terms of the competition itself, which is what they're really there for.
Earlier today, the World Triathlon hosted the number draw for the Olympics, with Flora getting number 29. Does that actually make it a little more exciting that we're ever closer now that she's officially in, got a number, and it's just now too big to get to the start line?
Oh, I think so. It's nerve-wracking for me. I can't imagine what it is for her. But, Flora's just been one absolutely dedicated athlete over decades. Okay? So she's gone from Olympics to Olympics, from strength to strength, and we certainly hope and pray that she stays, that her dream comes true, as we do for Dara and all of our athletes.
Is there any concern the fact that she's done one event this year where others have put in more time at events as opposed to training?
Not at all. I can remember when Flora came, I think Flora, being a two-time world champion, knows exactly what she needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
And she has gone, each Olympics, she's improved. Mm-hmm. And she knows that between she and her team, they know what she needs. I believe that, I remember it, and I think the members of Couture and possibly Judy remember when Flora said, came to the Olympic Association and said, I want to do these, I would like to get funding to support me going to these bicycle races. And we were all looking a little puzzled, but she's a triathlete. Like, why would she do that? She could get injured. This isn't a good thing. And Flora's like, no, I have to do that. I have to do that. Biking isn't my strongest discipline. I've got to do that. That's going to make me the athlete that I need to be. And when we saw her here in October, and she went up that hill, hill,
Yeah.
I said, yeah, 10 times. Flora knows exactly what she needs to do.
For the BOA, what would qualify as success for Tokyo? And looking ahead, how do you guys gauge success moving forward? Is it driven toward medals, is it qualification? What's the sort of ethos for you guys, and how you gauge success moving forward?
Well, if I have to be honest with you, we're always like, I apologize, I'm asking you to take your task on. I apologize. I mean, obviously, we like our athletes to podium. There's no two ways about that. That's the goal, that when you get to the creme de la creme of an event. But, personal bests, breaking national records, setting whole new standards, and what these two athletes will do for us there, hopefully will inspire the youth of tomorrow, how they can achieve these goals. And so getting to the Olympic Games, qualifying for it is huge, and I think they're to be given credit for that alone. But everyone has their own aspirations. We reevaluate our goals and objectives at the end of each quadrennial. We look at the events that we participated in. And if you think of how this quadrennial started in 2017 and 2018 at Youth Commonwealth Games, we had medals there in Commonwealth Games. Of course, Flora got her gold medal. So it's a progression. So that's why I say, as our motto is, journey to success, you have to get to that journey, do the journey to get where these two athletes are today, and they've done that. So each quadrennial, we reassess our situation and what our goals are. But we support all our athletes in all NSGBs taking this journey to reach the Olympics. So 2024 is only 3 years away. So these young athletes who didn't make it now, we've got the Junior Pan Am Games at the end of November. I believe Maddie has qualified in one of her events, and I'm hoping that we'll have other youngsters qualify for Junior Pan Am. That's a stepping stone to the next quadrennial. And then, of course, next year, there's the Commonwealth Games, and we're looking forward to these young athletes trying to aspire to qualify to get to those games as well.
My last question.
Okay.
I know it's every national sports governing body's responsibility to let their athletes know what the rules are.
Yeah.
But as the BOA, when you do your new website, can you make sure that the recommendation?
Absolutely done. Yeah, absolutely done. And as I said to you earlier, the website is a work in progress, and I'm sure you'll see a whole new face at the end of this quadrennial going into the new quadrennial.
Thank you.
Thank you all very, very much for being here. Certainly hope that you understand the process now, and we're open to talk to any of you at any time when available. So let's hope our athletes do well at the Olympic Games. Again, thank you for your time.
I have one thing, you asked about the
Yes, this is part of our new kits, actually, our casual kits. Yeah,
very proud to wear the pink and blue.
there you go.
We all should be.
Thank you all very, very much for attending today.
To